Would you say you are a proud Englishman
Absolutely.
as opposed to a proud Britishman?
Well, I think when you say Britishman, sounds weird, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yes,
it doesn't sound
I
right.
faltered rather
Yeah.
there because I don't know what
Yeah.
to actually.
Well, that's because that's not really a thing. British isn't an ethnic group; it's a civic identity. I think it's a valuable one, and I think it's good that we can have that open to everyone. But English is an ethnic identity, and I think it is wrong to try and take people's ethnic identities away from them. It's deeply disempowering. One of the things you're doing is severing the relations. If I'm not an Englishman, then a Scot can't make a joke about me, and if he's not a Scotsman, I can't make a joke about him, and I'm not confirmed in the reassurance that we know where we stand. And so now I'm isolated. I don't know him. I don't know his thoughts on me,
Yes.
and I don't know how I should behave in certain circumstances and how I should respond to jokes, or, maybe I should take them as insults. Maybe I should be in a fight now. Now, maybe we should take up arms against you. Who knows? Banter is a way of making sure that everyone knows their place. And this is not just like casually being undermined or coming to the end of its natural lifestyle cycle. This is we are suffering a direct siege on our culture from an enemy who is open about the fact that they want to abolish what we have. I mean, the most explicit example of this, in my opinion, is the decolonization movement in Oxford. How can you decolonize an English university? You, of course, can't. What this really is a de-Anglicization program of England. And so what this leads us to is a moral question that I don't think that the wider public are ready to answer, and that is, do the English as an ethnic group have a moral claim to England? And the left will say no. They will say no. They will say that the English don't exist, and if they do exist, they're evil, and we should abolish them. And I don't think that we should allow ourselves to be abolished.
The thing is that that's the modern left.
Yes.
But like, if you think, we always press the levelers into action in these situations.
We do, yeah.
But even going right to Tony Benn, I would have thought there's a very strong sense of Jerusalem, a very strong sense of English.
There used to be. There absolutely used to be. And Jeremy Corbyn, I think, would have actually been the sort of tail end of that.
Yes, I know what you mean.
And it's a shame that the modern left, and just to be clear, the forces that are besieging our culture are entirely foreign, and they, again, are self-conscious. They begin, I think you could probably, they're a form of communism. And they've worked out at the end of the 19th century, the communists realized that the proletariat are not a revolutionary force. And that was greatly disappointing to them because, of course, Marx had said, well, look, the capitalist system will make the situation so unbearable, the proletariat will rise up and abolish it. And they'll bring about a socialist dictatorship that will wither away into a communist utopia. None of that happened. And it turned out that, in fact, rather than being a revolutionary force, the proletariat are actually the most far-right reactionary force going, because why wouldn't they be? It's their relationships that they're defending. It's their knowledge and connections with their friends and family and the place that they live in that they're defending. Of course they're not revolutionary. They live a nice life. They like their lives. They like the people around. They're not going to rise up. And they would only rise up against a tyrannical authority like a socialist regime. But it's very clear that this has gone through, it sort of branched out into Leninism, fascism, and then whatever you want to call the Frankfurt School, which then went to America and then ended up merging with a bunch of the postmodern French intellectuals like Foucault, Derrida, de Beauvoir, and this gestated in American universities and emerged as something called critical legal scholarship. And out of critical legal scholarship came something called critical race theory. And essentially, to summarize it very briefly, critical race theory seems to want, and I'm not an expert on it, I'm still studying it, but it seems to want parallel legal systems for different ethnic groups, which I think is an unacceptable prospect. I think there should be one rule, the rule of law, for all people in a given country. And I probably think that because I'm an Englishman. But I'm not going to move from that position. I demand it. I demand it.
How would you actually characterize yourself now, actually, politically? I mean, I know that this is, boring question number 64 probably, but I mean, is there a shorthand for what you would call yourself?
Well, okay, so what's interesting is I wasn't really talking about politics before. I was really talking about social life and how I see myself socially in relation to other social groups and in relation to individuals in those groups. And none of that required government intervention. You know, whenever I meet a Scottish friend of mine, we have lots of good banter, and I don't need the government to sign off on any of this. But how do I think that the world should be structured when it comes to politics? I actually very much agree with, frankly, the classical liberal ideal. I'm a constitutionalist. My sacred document is the Magna Carta. I went to the Magna Carta in Salisbury Cathedral when I was on my UKIP tour, in fact, and I found it amazing that it's not guarded. It's not guarded. You just walk in there. I could have just picked it up. And if I was someone who was a hater of English culture, I could go in there and burn it. It's an 800-year-old document. It's irreplaceable. There are the 4 in existence. And that's another miracle as well, isn't it? You know, imagine having 4 copies of a document that's 800 years old. 4 800-year-old. We should have these under lock and key. They shouldn't just be, you know. I mean, the lady who was there just showing people around was just, I mean, if something terrible had happened, she was, you know, she was a very knowledgeable old dear, but she wasn't going to be able to stop them. And so I came away from that thinking, well, I'm glad to have seen it. It's in Latin, so I couldn't read it. I'm glad I've seen it, but like, I'm concerned now because I know that there are these forces that will topple statues, that will try and destroy and desecrate our cultural heritage. But when it comes to like how politically, how do I see myself? I still see myself as a classical liberal. I think that we should have constitutional protections. I think that this should be for everyone. Each individual should have constitutional protections. I think there should be limits on government. I think there should be a delineation between the public and the private. And I think there are places there the government shouldn't be.
I mean, the reason I ask that is because obviously when one talks about traditions and such like, the general assumption is that that is a conservative position. It doesn't have to be, but I think that is, I would say, the general assumption.
Well, on that point, actually, can I make a point? Because it's very interesting you say that, because I'm sure you'll have noticed very radically left-wing people who absolutely fetishize the native cultures of other places. And they will go all around the world and say, well, look, this man with a bone through his nose, look at his beautiful tribal traditions. These not his heritage. Is this not, and that sounds like an incredibly conservative position. And so, okay, well, but I accept it. That's fine. I agree. You know, I mean, as long as he's not burning his wife alive or something, you know, when he wants or whatever, you know, because I am obviously a believer in human rights. So, you know, that's fine. You know, as long as he's not doing any particular damage. But why can't we apply that same standard to our own culture? Because actually we've got that here. You know, I mean, and foreigners absolutely apply that same standard. They, like, you can read what foreigners write about England in particular, and it sounds like a fairy tale country that you'd made up in a Lord of the Rings novel. It just sounds made up. But when you realise this is actually a real place, it kind of just makes me want to be the Englishman that foreigners think we are. You know, it makes me think, okay, well, I should probably live up to this. You know, this is a good standard. Again, the word standard, I think, is an important one that we don't think about, because the reason England is frankly better than other countries is because of these standards. And it goes right the way back to Alfred. Alfred didn't say, God, why have you done this to us? Alfred didn't be like, oh, it's those Vikings. No, Alfred's like, we did this. We did this. We are the ones who strayed from the path and we got what we deserved. And so we have to change. We'll improve ourselves. We will take responsibility. We will improve our standards. And all of English civilization has been about maintenance of high standards. And all I see now is an attack on these standards. Because standards are very exclusive. And the whole point is exclusivity. Like this movement for total inclusivity. Well, why would you want that? Who wants anything that's open to everyone? You know, no one wants anything that's open to everyone. All of value comes from exclusivity. And the more exclusive it is, the more valuable it is. And so the higher your standards, the more difficult it is, the better the people that you get achieving the standards and therefore getting the position. This is what we would otherwise describe as a meritocracy. And again, all of these words, I'm sure you've heard them deeply under attack from the left. We have to defend them. They know what they're doing. They know that if they can destroy these standards, then they can essentially erase our culture, because these are the pillars of the culture. This is what holds up the sky as far as we're concerned. And we have to patrol this. We have to be on guard. Say, no, we're not prepared to drop these standards. And the assumption from the left as well is deeply, deeply racist, in my opinion, that foreigners can't abide by these standards. No, I think they can. I absolutely think they can. And what's more is I think they should. Is even more. It would be good for them to take from our example and follow these standards, because it's not like this was easy. It's not easy to uphold these standards, but it is good. It is an upward momentum. It makes you a better person. It makes the world around you better, and it stops you being envious and gross and violent and destructive. Look what Black Lives Matter is. Just a movement built on envy to destroy what other people have. And what's worse is they're not even harming the billionaires. They're harming the small businessman who's like, yeah, I'm gonna get up early today. I'm gonna make sure that I get that shipment in and it's on the shelves, and we'll get people, and I'll make some money, and I'll have made the world a better place in my own small way. That's what's under attack right now.